let's get started on the AOC situation or real quick. Does anyone have the initial like thing that started it? Because this started off with the Marjorie Taylor Greene bill. Okay, it started off with a Marjorie Taylor Greene bill where she basically I think like put out a messaging bill. That was like it's a classic messaging bill, but it's no different than I guess like when Bernie Sanders puts out a messaging bill to deny weapons transfers to Israel in the Senate. You know what I mean? Or an amendment. Sorry, not a bill. It was an amendment. Marjorie Taylor Greene's amendment to cut off offensive aid to Israel and also even defensive aid to Israel, which is completely oblivious. Completely irrelevant in this point of contention. So, but again, like I said, she basically pushed for this as a messaging bill in a way that is no different than like when Bernie Sanders does this. Bernie Sanders has tried to veto weapons transfers to Saudi Arabia in the past, knowing full well that it's not going to pass, but he's still trying to make an effort. Okay. And the same goes for Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Titan Greene, regardless of being a right-wing sociopath who is perhaps cynically getting on the fuck Israel train, it doesn't change the reality at all, was pushing for an amendment to stop all weapons transfers to Israel, including defensive weapons. This distinction does not matter ultimately because as we know, Israel uses the defensive shield that it has to be as belligerent as possible while it conducts its genocide and continues to bomb other countries, including but not limited to Syria now. As a matter of fact, as you know, Syria is in a state of turmoil at this moment. And so like the idea that like Israel, oh, this is just a defensive, this is our ally and we're giving them defensive weapons is like, yeah, okay, that doesn't mean anything unless you're going to be a real one and say, if you were to turn around and advocate for Israel while it's in the process of doing a genocide, to say that like, well, they need anti-aircraft systems and they need our consistent, unlimited support so they can be as belligerent as they want without any repercussions whatsoever, then you have to say that about every country. You know what I mean? Why don't we give Hamas an Iron Dome then? It's literally protecting the civilians. I think they deserve it much more than Israel does, as a matter of fact. Israel's gotten it for years and years. Why don't we give Russia some anti-air defense systems then? You know what I mean? Like, what do you mean? Do you think there's no civilians in Russia? You think there's no civilians in Gaza? Gaza is pretty much all civilians. What are we talking about? Mostly children, as a matter of fact. So unless you advocate to give like, anti-aircraft weapons to Nazi Germany while it was conducting the Holocaust and doing World War II because there were civilians in the territories that we were bombing and we must, Nazi Germany has a right to defend itself, you can't make this argument about Israel. It's ridiculous. It was completely ridiculous. Okay. So let's get started on this here. Members of Congress speak on the House floor. Marjorie Taylor Greene and AOC's response and all that.
Israel, our nation. And they're less than $400 billion in debt. They are quite a thriving and successful nation. Their economy is strong. They're doing a great job for their people. However, the United States, the American citizens, are $37 trillion in debt. Yet we're continuing to send hundreds of billions of dollars in foreign aid constantly to foreign countries. This has to end at some point. Our problems here at home for Americans and the American taxpayer that are paying for all of this have gotten too large. And I also want to point out that Israel bombed a Catholic church in Gaza, and that an entire population is being wiped out as they continue their aggressive war.
I'm sorry, under no circumstances are you allowed to be outflanked on an issue of morality that like the overwhelming majority of the American public can see by Marjorie Titan Greene of all people. This is a ginormous failure of the Democratic Party. This is not even a question. This should be a moment for the Democrats to, in unison, advocate for this exact same thing that Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying, so that Marjorie Taylor Greene looks like an outsider who's a hanger-oner on this issue. Okay? What are we doing here? Even from a cynical, cold, calculated framework, if you're just interested in the politics of it all, if you're just interested in winning, okay, the idea that you would allow someone like this psychopath to actually be the voice of moral clarity in American Congress is insane to me. Okay. Obviously, we make different calculations here. We obviously consider this from the perspective of the humanity of the Palestinians that are being ruthlessly slaughtered here, okay, by the apartheid state of Israel. It's completely unacceptable. It is completely inappropriate. It is such a disastrous failure of epic proportions that the Democrats are allowing the Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world and the Tucker Carlsons of the world to basically be the thought leaders on an issue that 80% of the public is on board with. Okay? This is ridiculous. This is completely ridiculous. That's it. The Diddy-crats have did it again. Okay? It makes no sense. It would be like if the Democrats were looking at the Epstein file saga and turning around and being like, let's not release them, actually. Trump is good on this issue, okay? It would be like that. You know, you have broad, unified support for serving justice to those who were involved with Jeffrey Epstein. And if the Democrats were just like coming out and being like, actually, nothing to see here, haha, don't even do it. Don't even look at it. Look the other way, please. It blows my mind how bad the Democratic Party is. Oh my God. Not gonna lie, I thought you would defend her. What are you talking about? There have been plenty of instances where I've actually criticized AOC, specifically on this stuff. I am a fair assessor, okay? I grade politicians on a curve. I grade them as I match them up with what my expectations are of them, and my expectations are sound and reasonable. My expectations are not insane. I'm not demanding AOC do something above and beyond. I'm demanding that she does the bare minimum. But then also, I guess, on top of that, be a thought leader, be a leader in this party, especially at a time when we know for a fact that the majority of Jews in New York, for example, voted for Zohran Mamdani over Andrew Cuomo. Zohran Mamdani was uncompromising in his anti-Israel position. As a matter of fact, he said he was going to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu. Okay? What are we doing? The proof is in the pudding. At this point, any politician that has their ear to the ground, that refuses to recognize how much this calculation has changed, is not doing it because they're oblivious. They're doing it because they want the conversation to shift. They are trying to lead people back into a pro-Israel position. That's it.
Gaza. Now, we're heartfelt about the October 7th tragedy, that when people were killed, innocent people were killed. However, at some point, the United States needs to recognize that Israel is a strong country. They are nuclear armed, and they are capable of defeating their own enemies. It's right to stop funding this.
It is unexpected. I will say it is unexpected. I know everyone will say AOC, I told you so, AOCIA, blah, 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 blah. Listen to me, okay? Many people who say that are completely oblivious to her past voting record, okay? There have been instances where she has voted consistently to like defend Israel and stuff like that, which is, again, a non-starter for many, for every congressperson pretty much. But today is different, okay? We are 2 years into a genocide, and the attitude has changed. The attitude and the opinion, the public opinion has changed. Okay? It's unacceptable. It is unacceptable after 2 years to still stand in defense of Israel, to say, oh, there's a difference between defensive weapons and offensive weapons. There is no difference. Very mad at AOC. I think people are misunderstanding this amendment vote, though. It's not selling out or being an agent or anything like that. It's likely a cynical attempt to fend off attacks in the future statewide, nationwide elections. Bizarre and out of touch risk aversion. Yes, bizarre and out of touch risk aversion. She ultimately voted against the funding package, but you can't fence sit this. And the justification she gave doesn't make any sense. No, it doesn't make any sense. That's what I'm saying. Exactly. I'm not saying she's AOCIA or anything like that. This is someone who is refusing to read the room. And the irony here is that AOC is supposed to be a leader in the Democratic Party, a progressive voice in the Democratic Party. What are you doing? I'm not saying she's like compromised by AIPAC or whatever. That's not my opinion at all. My opinion is this is a profoundly bad political move. Okay? It is a profoundly bad political move. It basically shows that her political instincts are still, after a couple years of being in Congress, her political instincts, especially on this stuff, is so bad. Your expectations of AOC is what led you to be shocked several times over because you listened to her words and not her actions. What? No, that is not, that is incorrect. My expectations of AOC are working within the confines of the Democratic Party and being able to read the goddamn room. Okay. I am an incredibly fair critic of AOC. You guys oftentimes, like you did with the Zoran endorsement, will go along with these narratives that like she is, CIA compromise, all this shit, okay? That's not the case. It's just, it's something worse than that. Ironically enough, it's silly. Let's see what Felix had to say. Truly and shockingly stupid. Beyond the nonsensical distinction between defensive and offensive weaponry, the state of constant warfare with neighboring countries is putting us in so many self-defense situations. Why is the one country entitled to free refills? It's insane. You think it was the Bill of Rights. Israel has enough resources at its disposal for universal health care, a relatively gigantic military, and the Haredi Dole program. Do they just deserve free interceptor missiles more than other countries? I don't even think this is cynicism. AOC isn't a cynic. She's stupid. A true cynic seeking to become the standard bearer of the electoral left would at least recognize the moment they're in. This is just pure idiocy and cowardice. That's what I mean. This is just a bad political decision for someone who wants to run for president. It is a bad political decision. It is the expectation. This is the expectation you would have. A bad political decision such as this one is supposed to come from the likes of Kamala Harris. It's not supposed to come from someone like AOC. Okay? It's just an incredibly bad political decision. I think she's 100% running for president in 2028 and thinks AOC doesn't even support defensive weapons. It's just too much heat and impossible to explain to ADL-fed reporters, so is vibing through it, despite it making no sense. This, of course, doesn't justify the defense, but it's my read. Yeah, that's quite likely. But I think she's also such an article head that she's afraid of legitimizing MTG by voting on this. I think that Felix's assessment on this is entirely correct. She doesn't want to look like she's aligned with Marjorie Taylor Greene under any circumstance whatsoever. And she is way too beholden to like the old school woke, the old school woke people that work in these campaigns, that woke as a pejorative. Like, I mean, like rad libs, you know what I mean? People that are like, why would you go on the Joe Rogan Experience type people, which is just like, you need to be a shark. You need to be a shark. You need to be vicious. None of that stuff works anymore. We're in the post-Trump era. Okay? That's it. Rad libs. Who gives a shit? It does not make any sense whatsoever. Anyway, so initially she said, where was it? Initially she said something along the lines of like, Marjorie Taylor Greene's amendment does nothing to cut off offensive aid to Israel nor end the flow of U.S. munitions being used in Gaza. Of course I voted against it. What it does do is cut off defensive Iron Dome capabilities while allowing the actual bombs killing Palestinians to continue. I have long stated that I do not believe that adding the death count of the innocent victims of the war is constructive to its end. That is a simple and clear difference of opinion that has long been established. This is an incredibly cowardly way to defend this decision, by the way. It would have been better off if she just said like I don't like Marjorie Taylor Greene and it's a cynical messaging bill or something. Even then it would have been cowardly for her to not vote for it. But it is ridiculous to say, oh, it's defensive weapons. What do you mean defensive weapons? Who gives a shit? What are we talking about? Everyone at this point, especially someone like AOC, should be aware that Israel gets to literally do as much violence as possible because they know full well that we're always going to be footing the bill on the defensive side, okay? It's not about like letting Israeli civilians die. This is not the case, okay? The point is, if Israel feels like they are left unguarded, okay, or if they feel the pressure from BDS, for example, boycott, divestments, and sanctions on the state of Israel, then they will stop doing genocide. That's the whole point. It is the least violent means of stopping Israel. It is ridiculous. No one is saying like, oh, blow up Israeli civilians, please. That's stupid. That's not the argument here. The argument is Israel will stand down if we stop giving them weapons, defensive weapons and offensive weapons, just all weapons. And it's ridiculous because no one would make the argument, yeah, look, we were only selling Germany anti-aircraft ammo. It was just defensive weapons. It would be ridiculous. That would be a ridiculous argument. How are you this dense? If Israel was limited in defensive weaponry, it would be forced to choose diplomacy and over war to come to the negotiation table sooner. You think it'd be this reckless in Gaza if it knew hundreds of rockets were headed its way? So short-sighted is the case. That's it. Like, this argument is not a real argument at all. This argument is an argument that you take if you are still trying to exist in the old world, okay? In the old way of politics. This is pre-October 7 politics. This is Bernie Sanders pre-October 7 being like, well, you know, Israel has a right to defend itself. It's done. That's over. It's especially over for you. This position maybe is not over for like a Kamala Harris, but for you, you're supposed to be the room reader. You're not supposed to be tone deaf. You're not supposed to be tone deaf to the cries of the Palestinians. So I think it's just such bad politics. It is such bad politics. And then to make matters worse, she's also doubling, tripling, quintupling down on like attacking the left, which is only going to draw more enmity because like it's not even a good issue to criticize the left on. Because this is the one time when like liberals are on board with this. You know what I mean? This isn't like oh, why aren't you advocating for seizing the means of production and or why aren't you advocating to like military intervention in Israel or something? You know what I mean? Like, that's not like the expectation here is for you, knowing full well that this bill is not even going to, this amendment is not going to pass, still as a strong advocate for human rights to turn around and say, I don't like Marjorie Taylor Greene, but I think that on this issue, we have to cut off weapons aid to Israel. That's it. Defensive, offensive, doesn't matter. All aid. That's what sanctions are. What are we doing? We're supposed to be advocates for boycotting and we are supposed to be advocates for boycotting the state of Israel, for demanding sanctions to the state of Israel, for demanding divestment from the state of Israel. This is a part of that process. If you can't even do that, then what the are we doing? I'm sorry, guys. This is completely ridiculous. This is way past my red line, especially for someone like AOC, way past my red line. And the reason for why I said this, and I'm just some random commentator, okay? Who the am I, right? I'm just some dumbass. Who cares what I have to say and think on this? But like, this is way past the red line for that reason, because none of these things are pushed for so we kill Israelis, okay? We push for this so that Israel cannot maintain its current campaign of bloodshed, unlimited bloodshed, because we all know that Israel will stop before it gets to a point where they put themselves in harm's way. And it does not, like, this is bad policy. It's immoral. It's morally repugnant policy, okay? But worse than that, it's bad politics. It's such bad politics, okay? It's incredibly bad politics. In this day and age, in this time, to stand as a voice of progress, as a voice of the progressives in Congress, as someone who's most likely going to run for president. I've said this before about AOC, like, she should never respond to Instagram and to people online, okay? She should never do that. One takeaway here is that AOC is way too online. She's getting upset over the narrative among Twitter leftists and hyper-focusing on the bad faith inaccuracies about her rather than the larger problem that she voted against defunding the Iron Dome. Google is free. If you're saying I voted for military funding, you are lying. Receipts attached. Drag me for my positions all you want, but lying about them doesn't make you part of the left. If you believe neo-Nazis are welcome and operating in good faith, you can have them. This, by the way, is the overall package, but she voted against the amendment. And not only did she vote against the amendment to cut off Iron Dome funding to Israel, but then also on top of that, she turned around and defended the position by claiming that this was, a way to stop civilians from being killed. Okay? A way to stop Israeli civilians from being killed. And it's like, that's not the point here. Okay? That's not the point at all. And also, on top of that, she's throwing her closest allies in Congress under the bus. If you believe neo-Nazis are welcome and operate in good faith, you can have them. Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and Summer Lee voted for this. Is Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, and Summer Lee saying, like, we love neo-Nazis? That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. And Al Green, too. Al Green as well. Is Al Green on board with neo-Nazis? No. Why is Al Green, a long-standing, old Democrat, old school Democrat. Why is Al Green on board with this amendment, but AOC is not? It is completely unacceptable. Okay? Every single person in the Progressive Caucus should be on board with this. Greg Kazar should be on board with this. Every single person in the Progressive Caucus, including AOC, should be on board with this. This is completely unacceptable. Okay? This is not a single issue thing. Okay? Not that it matters. It's a genocide, so obviously being single issue on the genocide is perfectly fine. But this is this is yet another instance where it's both bad policy and bad politics. Okay? It's good policy to cut off weapons transfers to Israel entirely. Okay? That is the only way that Israel will be forced to stop. It's good politics to be anti-Israel in this day and age. Not only is it moral, but it's also good politics because that's what people want. It is a way to communicate earnesty. That's why cynical actors like Marjorie Taylor Greene take advantage of the lack of interest in the Democrats here and make themselves look like leaders in this movement. I think they're not entirely wrong, that the pulse of the country is not yet at the removed defensive system stage. They will get there eventually, but this stupid fence sitting makes no one happy. No, that's ridiculous. There's a way to communicate this, okay? There is a way to communicate this. You're wrong, okay? I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is unironically closer to the pulse of the average person than AOC is on this issue. It is shocking to say. You are wrong. Americans don't want any aid going to Israel. What are we talking about? It's gone. It's done. Anyone that doesn't read the writing on the wall here is basically still operating on the old guard way of thinking. And you're exactly the same type of person who most likely looked at the Zoran stuff and was like, well, Zoran has to take a wishy-washy position on Israel because he wants to win. He wants to win. It's like, no, that's different. That's a different time and place in politics. We have moved beyond. We are in an entirely different space. The zeitgeist has shifted. Think about how much even a little bit of hope, a crumb of hope, can change political discourse in this country. Post-Zoran, think about how every single person has recalculated. You got like the Andrew Schultzes of the world being like, the Democratic Socialists are the only America First party. Like, think about that. How did that happen? How did that happen? How did we get to a position where the Democratic Socialists are seen as like the saviors of the Democratic Party by broad Democratic Party voters and the base of support? The Deborahs, the Barbaras, all of these people have decided that saying Israel does not matter. And now MAGA is dominating the Israel tip. It's crazy. With AOC's recent vote, this is worth consideration. Will clocked it too. Given AOC's most recent statements, I now fully believe Bernie Sanders and AOC purposely ducked the full interview they told us on they give him. I don't buy that they were running behind on schedule or whatever. I never did. I think they used him. Will clocked it too. That situation was weird. I was willing to give the benefit of the doubt, but come on, this is no shade to Hasan, and I could be wrong. But my instinct from that whole interaction was that they used him for his audience and never planned on giving him the push, giving him time to push him on anything. I don't think that's the case. But I mean, look, it's, I haven't had them on since then, so who knows? No, they had a speech. I don't think it's the case for this particular situation. I will continue to try to have them on.